Cole County farming. We farmed about all over the county, and farming was what made me want to get in the military. We gave up farming in 1950, and we moved to Gadsden. And in June, might have been May, what it was, of '53, I joined the National Guard and served out Korea was just over with. And I served until January in the Guard. Then I went on active duty in the military, in the Army. And of course I spent time in Europe, various places here in the States. I was stationed in Shreveport, Louisiana. That's where we was at when Don and I got married. And I went from there to school in Virginia on helicopters. Then I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama. And in January of '68, I was an instructor at Fort Rucker. January of '68 was when I went to Vietnam for the first time. Came back to Fort Rucker in January of '69. And I believe it was August.
I'll turn that off. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Are you hot? Are you hot?
We can turn that stuff off.
Come back. Fort Rucker.
Yeah, I came back to Fort Rucker in January '69. Very cool. Then I believe it was August of '70 when I went back to Vietnam. That's when I went with the Razorbacks. When I came back, my dad died in June of '71. And I came back and I didn't have to go back because I was under 90 days, so I didn't have to go back. And then we retired in '74. And I've been working at the hospital ever since, practically. I went to school a couple of years.
Tell me about the first time you found out you were going.
The first time I was going, I was supposed to have went in '66. Was when my first tour was supposed to have been. Because when Joe was born, the day Joe was born, well, I took my flight physical to go to Vietnam. And we come home, we moved home. And then my dad had to have surgery, and they didn't expect him to live, so they reassigned me back to Fort Rucker. I wanted to go.
How come you wanted to go?
Well, that's what I trained for. That had been my life. That's what I trained for. I wanted to go. I volunteered to go while I was on the missile base in Louisiana. And they turned me down because I didn't have an MOS. They were hard up or didn't need any anti-aircraft missile people over there at the time. Because poor old Charlie didn't have many aircraft. But I wanted to go because, shoot, I grew up during World War II in Korea. And the Army, when I got old enough to get in, the Army had been my life. And that's what I wanted to do. Dawn understood that when she married me, that the military was what I was going to do. So, yeah, I wanted to go. But God only knows I didn't know what I wanted to get, what I was getting into when I went. Of course, I shipped out to go and got family moved home. And I flew out. And the day I went over, the day I left home, was Super Bowl #2. Now you can figure out how many years ago that's been. Because the pilot, we flew out of Birmingham and flying into Philadelphia because I went out to Fort Dix, New Jersey. And they were giving us the scores of the game. Now back then, I was a pro football nut, you know, or a football nut. I just stick to college ball now. But we went through Fort Dix, and the Army, bless their hearts, they give us our little orientations and everything while we was there. Put us in short sleeve khaki shirts. This is in January. We had the old khaki uniforms and short sleeve shirts, and flew to Alaska. And we had to get off the airplane now. And they said, here we are in short sleeve shirts, and don't touch the handrails, you know, don't grab it, because you freeze too. Something like 10 below or something up there. And we had to get off the airplane so they could refuel. Of course, we had all kinds of remarks to make that day. The Army's wisdom, you know, boy, they could pull some dukes. But anyway, we got out of there, flew to Yokota, Japan. We got off there. The weather was cold there, but it wasn't near like it was. And we flew from there. Each leg was about an 8-hour flight. It took basically 24 hours to fly over there. And you got over there, you crossed the international date line, so the dates got screwed up this year. You went over. And so did your jet lag. And, but when we left Japan, most of us on the flight was our first trip over. People in my MOS and job, you know, they generally got a year over there and 18 months back in the States. And at that time, some of them was going back for their second tour. So they were a lot smarter than we were. And we were going in, and as closer we got, the more nervous or apprehensive or whatever, however you'd want to. We were supposed to land at, and well, we did eventually land at Benoit Air Base, or airport. Well, we got there. I couldn't land. There's firefighting going on the runway. And as we were circling, you could see it. Down there, you could see the tracers and things. It was going on. And I don't know how long we circled. I don't know, an hour. Might have been long.
Just long enough to give you an ulcer.
Yeah. And we finally got on the ground. And when we got on the ground, now they rushed us off of that aircraft, you wouldn't believe. But in the meantime, the guy that was ready to come back home was trying to get on that airplane. I often thought, why in the hell didn't I turn around and get in that other line, you know? Because they was rushing him onto the aircraft. as they was rushing us off. I don't know how in the world, because the aircraft didn't seem to be on the ground that long that they could unload the luggage, because it was an old stretch 10, and I guess there's a couple of $100 on there. And how they unloaded all that luggage and got the other luggage, I hadn't figured that one out yet. But all of us got our luggage, it was sitting there. They had us on buses going through the streets of whatever and the back roads. And they took us to then what they call Camp Alpha. That was where everybody departed from and left from. Of course, we had guards on the buses, but they was the only one who was armed. Hell, we didn't have nothing. And we got into Camp Alpha, and I don't know what time of night it was, and don't know how long at that time since I'd had any sleep. But we got in there, and they very briefly give us an orientation. So there's the barracks. They had the barracks set up with the bunks and the blankets and and everything. Well, most of us want to know where in the hell we can get a weapon, because they were talking about being under fire and everything. And they said, oh, you'll get your weapons when you get to your unit. Well, when the hell is that going to happen? Because that time, the noise around and them talking about the fights on the perimeter and possibility that get overrun, and there we're sitting there with nothing. Right? That's when fear set in. What are we going to do? Throw rocks at it? Well, the bunkers are here and the bunkers are there. Well, what good are the bunkers if you don't have nothing to defend yourself with? That was my initiation to in-country. It just so happened, I guess they had ample people to handle the situation. Well, they had to have. But we didn't know that at the time. And it's a helpless feeling, being there unarmed. I thought that was the dumbest thing that the Army ever done. There should have been weapons there for every man that got off that plane. Because we knew how to use them. But I guess they thought just like green recruits going into basic training or something. I don't know what their line of thought was. They ain't no wonder we got our ass kicked up. But we lost that war. With the mentality that was used with getting replacements in and getting them out. The other wars, when men went in, they carried their weapons with them. And they was armed when they went in there. I don't know whether it was the generals we had over there. There might have been some second lieutenant controlling it. I don't know. Or the Turkeys in Washington controlling it. But send a bunch of men in when it's hot like that, and not even arm them. We didn't have a chance. If Charlie had overrun it, we wouldn't have stood a chance. I guess we could throw rocks or.
What day did you get off the plane?
Pardon?
What day did you get off the plane?
It had to be somewhere around the 16th, I believe, or 17th of January of '98. This is something we're going to have trouble with is dates and time.
I was just kind of looking at kind of when.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's an exact date.
It was somewhere in that time.
What were y'all talking about and thinking about circling the runway?
Most of the thing we were talking about is what kind of a damn mess have we got ourselves into, that we can't get out of. We even suggested to the crew on the aircraft that they just go ahead and take us all back to Japan, because we were scared and it was nervous type conversation, because we were looking down there where we was going and we're seeing tracers.
Did you know though that you weren't going to have any weapons when you got off at that time?
No, at that time we didn't know. We thought, I guess I did, and I'm sure everybody else did, as soon as we get off the plane, we'll be armed, but that wasn't the case. Like I say, it kind of reminded me of when I went through basic training. They loaded us all on a bus, and took us to this kind of area, and we got off and was assigned to barracks and everything. But of course, nobody was shooting at us, or shooting at the camp, the compound, like they were there. And I guess the men that was assigned to defend the place done a good job. So, but it wouldn't have hurt them. They could have warned us on that to get it. We expected to be armed as soon as we got there. Or the most of us did. The little group that I was talking with, the ones sitting around us. And we didn't have any old hats that.
So where'd they take you to your
Camp Alpha was.
Was it in the middle of the jungle? What was it like? What did it look like?
It was a barracks complex with a typical Army camp. It was fenced in with perimeters and that typical thing. They had place to have briefings, and they broke us down, when we got there. It looked like it's hard to describe what it looked like. It was just unreal. You coming out of this country and you flying in to over there, and probably they're 100 years behind us in culture, and we had a few little electric lights in the compound that they shut out on us, so Charlie couldn't shoot at them. So it wasn't nothing pretty to look at. There was old drab buildings and dirt to walk on. It so happened I got there during dry season, and you wouldn't believe it. I didn't believe it when I got in. The conditions those men and we lived under. And the stink in that country was just something else. You had to lose your sense of smell after a while. Bear in mind they had no sewer systems. Very little running water. And very little electricity anywhere. We made our showers, we used fuel tanks. Put them up and we'd use a tanker truck to fill them full of water. Get a cold shower. I mean, beat nothing. The country was unreal with smell and everything. It just, from the air, it's a pretty country. But down on the ground, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't nothing pretty about the place.
When you went over, what rank were you? When you went over there, first time, what rank were you?
First time I staffed R&D 6. Because I got my ass out of the Army and lost me E7. I had to go back in as an E6. And, after they got the process through that Camp Alpha, we were assigned out a bug. I don't like bugs. And boy, they had some buttes of them over there. But I was trying to remember where our battalion headquarters was where I flew into. And then I was assigned company. But I can't remember that little town, or the little base where battalion was at the time. But anyhow, I spent a day there and I flew out to Fort Benning. Now that was the rear end of Vietnam. That's when I joined the 162nd Assault Helicopter Company, known as the Vultures. I've got a plaque over there from them. And we were in the middle of a jungle. And Charlie hit us, the first night I was there, we got hit. Scared me to death. Them rockets and mortars coming in, they'd throw rockets in 122 rockets in on you. And you could hear them when they went over you. But that one you didn't worry about. It's that sucker behind that you hadn't heard yet. Right? Because you never hear the one that gets you. But I was assigned that unit. And we worked with all the places around transport and infantry. And I was assigned the service platoon sergeant, which was a maintenance platoon. We took care of the aircraft. And a short day for us was an 18-hour day. Shoot, we got 6 hours sleep. We thought we was dying and going to heaven. because we had to have so many aircraft. The percentage of availability of aircraft was critical. Because not only did we need it to complete our mission, but some of our sister units needed to borrow aircraft from us to make their commitment. That part I didn't like, because they'd bring their aircraft back in shot up and we had to fix them. It was bad enough when we had to fix it when our people shot them up. But our assignment to maintain aircraft, you have periodic inspections and everything, and then you have what we call ash and trash, which was to repair the aircraft when they come in off the mission. I had two crews. One of them took care of the routine maintenance that had to be pulled, and the other took care of the aircraft when they come in, when the fleet come in. We were committed to 11 aircraft, slicks. Now we had two types of aircraft. We had slicks, which transported troops, and we had gunships, which protected those. We had 8 gunships, and we had 22 slicks. And normally our commitment a day was 11 slicks and 4 guns. So we would have an opportunity to fix the others. But flying as much as we did. Now it wasn't unusual for our aircraft to leave out at 6 in the morning and not get back in till midnight. And those that come in that had problems, we had to get them ready to go the next morning. Had to be there. Had to be done because the infantry was depending on us. Now, those are the boys that had it rough, was the ones in the infantry. I flew more missions than probably I should. Hindsight being 20/20, I know if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have flew a dang one. I'd have kept my butt on the ground. But we'd take them poor boys out there, and we'd drop them off in rice paddies or in old dusty, just young kids. And they'd go fight Charlie. A lot of times we had to drop them in hot LZ. A hot LZ. LZ is a landing zone. But Charlie knew where those were, and he'd be throwing mortars in on us as we went in. We'd have to drop them kids off. And a lot of times they wouldn't even make it out of the LZ. We'd drag the wounded and the dead on the aircraft. Of course, we had medevac over there. I was trying to remember what they call themselves. But a lot of times we could get them out of there a lot quicker than they could. They had red crosses painted on their aircraft, and Charlie wasn't supposed to shoot at them. Bullshit. He didn't recognize that red cross. He shot them boys. And at least our aircraft were armed, and we had gunships on us. So a lot of times we'd get the wounded out of there a lot quicker than they could. I know I'm rambling.
I want you to ramble.
And we had our men shot up. Why in the hell I ever went out flying like I did, I don't know. I remember, well, we were coming out of a hot LZ. Night line gunner. I spotted one down below and I opened up on him. I guess it was the first one I killed. Or I don't know that I killed him. But I walked that machine gun in on him and watched it go right through him. But as we was banking out, the ship behind us says, "Sarge, he's got up and run." I said, "Well, hell, he can't run far because I know I hit him." Just know that. I remember that. Only too well. But we lost men, getting shot at on we lost aircraft. And we lost some. It was what's supposed to have been friendly fire. In March of '68, I remember this. Remember that date. I don't remember the day of the month, but I know it's in March. We come under heavy mortar attack there at Food Bend, which wasn't unusual. I think the time I was there, we got hit about every day. Sometime during the day, and it was usually at night. Because he wasn't going to let us get any sleep, but what he didn't know was we wasn't sleeping anyway. But as I remember, it was probably 9, 10 o'clock at night. Of course, when the mortars and rockets started coming in, our artillery commenced to return fire. And we scrambled a light fire team, which was 2 gunships. And they called for artillery to cease firing. And as our gunships was moving in, one artillery gun fired one more round. And we were, at this time, we were standing on top of the bunker, watching it. And that artillery round hit that gunship right in the fuel cell. Blowed it out of the air, of course. We didn't go out that night to get them. But we went out the next morning to get them. The pilot and co-pilot was still strapped in their seats, blown completely out of the aircraft. The gunner was pretty well still intact. But the crew chief, who was sitting right beside that fuel cell, there wasn't enough left for him to send home. I didn't have to go that morning. And I wish I hadn't. Because we took the maintenance ship to go out. Of course, there wasn't nothing left for the helicopter to even worry about. Sorry.
Okay. Take time.
I'll be all right.
You did way better than top of my head than I would. And we don't have to talk about nothing you don't want to.
Well, I get carried away and these things come to mind. These are the things that stand out in mind. I don't remember the enlisted crew. They volunteered to be on standby. And they didn't have to because they were both fixing to go home. They had done their time and they had less than a week left in the country, as I remember. But they took it so somebody else didn't have to. And when I was Daddy wrote back, I wish I'd kept a copy of that letter. But we didn't have copiers back then. He said, well, or basically, of course, went on to say how bad he hated to lose his son, but he'd rather him die in Vietnam his hideout in Canada. I remember that. I guess you remember. No, you don't. You don't remember. You've probably heard and read about it. But how we were criticized, the people that served in Vietnam and everything, all the protests and everything had come about. We was called baby killers and all this kind of stuff, which makes you feel good. To be called something like that. And like most of the protests, they started out of Berkeley, California, which some people, I guess, don't have nothing to do. But them were fine little boys. I didn't know the pilots that well. I knew them, but didn't know them that well. But that's an example of getting killed with friendly fire. It happens. It happens in the war. But anyhow, we got them brought in. Like I say, there wasn't enough aircraft to worry about, so it's still out in that jungle, I guess. The Vietnamese people probably found something to use it for. Might have made frying pans or something out of it. But, and this is something you need to know, I guess, is the Vietnamese people. The vast majority of them, they were rice farmers and this kind of thing. And that war meant nothing to them. They'd been at war for 100 years. Before it came, I didn't even know, when I first heard of Vietnam, I thought, well, dang, I thought I was pretty good. When I was in school and everything, but I never heard of it. It used to be French Indochina before they changed the name to Vietnam. And I guess this happened after the French got kicked out. They got kicked out of there before we did in 1954. They couldn't have put the little ashes either. Now, let me tell you something, too, while we were talking about this. I call them all kinds of names and everything, but they were a worthy adversary. They were good at what they did, and that was jungle or guerrilla warfare, which we went into that country. And we were a conventionally trained army. We knew nothing about guerrilla warfare. No, we were used to fighting wars like World War II, Korea, and this kind of thing. We knew nothing about fighting a guerrilla warfare. And those suckers had tunnels everywhere. They would capture a tank or something. Hell, they'd bury it until they was ready to use it. So you couldn't spot it from the air or anything. They were very good. And if they'd had the weapon that we had, now we could have won that war. Washington would have let us. Johnson and his advisors wouldn't let us. And I've often wondered what would have happened if Kennedy had got assassinated. Because Kennedy was a war veteran. He fought World War II. And was pretty much a war hero. Which you'll notice as we go through this, there ain't no hero blood pumped through these veins. It's survival that took over. You get bored real quick.
I'm far from bored. I'm far from bored.
Turn that recorder off, man.
figure out how. Hang on.
Let's see, where was it?
Dropping folks off in rice paddies. Dropping folks off in rice paddies.
Yeah, we done that. That was so sad. You know, well, let me kind of break it down and give you a little thing for aviation. Now, we had it rough at times, but nobody had it rough like the infantry. Because we'd fly missions and support them all day. And of course, some of the guys get wounded, the aircraft get shot at, and this kind of thing. Some guys didn't make it back. But the ones of us did, at night, we'd get back, we'd have a hot meal. And we'd have a shower. It might be cold. And we had a bunk to sleep in. Now, them poor grunts didn't have that. They'd be laying out there in the jungle and making do with what they had. So, don't misunderstand that I'm trying to tell you we had it the toughest. We didn't. Basically, comparing us to the grunts, infantry, I'm talking about. When I mention grunts, that's infantry. I don't know why we call them grunts or whatever. It just seemed like a good thing to call them. But I had all the respect and everything in the world for all of them because they was the one that fought the war. We supported them, and we flew them in and out, flew after dead and wounded, and I'll tell you a bit of a war story. We brought in, I don't know, we had 2 or 3 of the dead and pieces on the aircraft. And of course, when you're flying, blood's everywhere. You get blood all over you, and there's nothing like the smell of blood or anything. Make you so sick. You'll lose everything you've eaten, and anything you think about eating, you'll lose. And we'd bring them guys in, and we'd take them to Graves Registration. Graves Registration.
That's a hard word.
Yes, it is. But anyhow, we'd haul them in there. And the first trip I made in there, I never got used to it. Never. But they come out, and they got them off, and they had water hoses out there. They strip them down, wash them down with them water hoses. And I'm over throwing up. One of them come over and said, "Oh, Sarge, you'll get used to it." And no, I won't. Never get used to that. I didn't. I'm not used to it today. But them guys had a job to do and everything, and they had no choice because these guys was filthy, they had bloody, everything. And before they could prepare them, they had to clean them. And you didn't have the facilities over there that you have here. You was lucky to have a water hose. And that's usually run from a tanker truck. They'd wash them down, prepare them the best they could. I don't know that end of it because as soon as we could wash some of the blood and stuff out of our aircraft, we left. But I do know that put them in the metal caskets and put them on the old transports and transport them back. And a lot of times there's pieces missing. They just put in there what they had. And a whole bunch of them was never recovered. They talk today about prisoners of war still over there. I don't believe that. Because they had no facilities in South Vietnam to maintain the prisoners. The prisoners were usually, most of them, was the ones that were shot down over North Vietnam. Now there was some captured that made it up there. But we was blessed in '68 with picking up some of the men that had been captured. And they had been so tortured and everything, their guts cut out, their testicles and they're cut off and jammed down their throats. And that's why I carried, when I flew, I carried a .38. And a .38 is, when I go flying, I go check out a .38. And it's not a offensive weapon. And the only reason I carried it was I wasn't going to be caught and tortured like those guys. That wasn't going to happen to me, because I was going to blow my brains out before they captured me. I was going to get as many of them as I could, but they wasn't going to capture me. And a whole lot of folks felt the same way, especially the ones that had been blessed with picking up some of those people that had been captured. Because any man that was captured in South Vietnam was tortured and killed. Or I'd say 90% of them. The only prisoners that was kept and maintained, and some of them may have been moved, I don't know that. I do know that our prisoners of war in Hanoi, Jane Fonda got a bunch of them killed and tortured and everything. And I'm going to tell you, young, today, if I had the opportunity, if she walked in that door, I could kill her right here and never give it a second thought. And go out and go to bed and go to sleep. God, that bitch. And then want to make her a woman of the century or something? That's sad. Totally sad. She done more harm to the cause in Vietnam than old Ho Chi Minh did himself. An American woman. Why wasn't she tried for treason? She should have been put before a firing squad. I'm going to make her the woman of the century. Yeah, I would. So you might start, you might be a Jane Fonda fan. But I've got nothing for her. I don't ever think about doing anybody harm. And I won't, unless it's forced me to, except her. And I can take her out. I could. And never give it, and I could go do my time for it, if that's what it called for. But I believe if I got 12 good Vietnam veterans on my jury, I believe that. And especially if I could get a prisoner of war or two. If that turned me loose, justifiable homicide and everything. I believe that. Young, I believe it.
I believe that too.
Because I know if a man took her out, and I was sitting on his jury, is he not guilty from where to go?
You wouldn't even have to hear the trial.
No. Wouldn't even have to hear it. No.
Because I got to ask you a question.
Okay.
When you first went over there and you were on that plane, and you were circling, and you were saying all that, what did you think the cause was for you being there? From the bottom of your heart, what did you believe the reason was that you were there?
I guess the cause never crossed my mind. Because I was a career military man, and I had been used to going where I was sent. So I guess the cause never crossed my mind. Didn't think, what in the hell did you get yourself into? And I was excited and scared at the same time about being there. Because I had trained, I think I had been in the Army about 14 years on my first tour. And that's all I had done was trained during that time. And I guess what was upmost in my mind at the time was, other than being nervous and scared, was I'm going to finally get to apply some of this training. I wanted to go, I just didn't know what I was getting into. When I was growing up, World War II and Korea and everything, I think I was about 9, something like that, when World War II was over with. And then all these movies started coming out about World War II. One of the men that I respected the most during my career was Audie Murphy. Probably if you see him, and if you've ever seen him in movies, it's these westerns and everything. But he was the highest decorated man out of World War II. He earned, and he would have been a career soldier if he hadn't been wounded, because he helped 2 Medal of Honors and and he went in the Army. I believe he was 16, might have been 17 when he went in. And but like I say, I never dreamed. I admired him for what he does. And if you ever get a chance to see the movie To Hell and Back, that was his story. He said, of course, Hollywood had to decorate it up some. He said when one of his buddies got shot, and they showed it in the movie, he said when he got shot and when he died, I was holding him. But he said Hollywood wouldn't have that. Just lay him out on the ground. Hollywood wouldn't show that part. men that serve in combat, and you probably heard this before, they develop, it's kind of a special bond or whatever, because they're used to depending on each other. You have to depend on each other for your life. The man that's covering your back has got to cover your back, just like you've got to cover his. And you develop however you'd want to term it, a lasting respect or whatever, just like this group of men, we still get together. We serve together under a whole lot of pressure. All of the units still, and just like the 162nd that I'm talking about now, I didn't go to their reunion down at Fort Rucker because as we get into this thing, you're going to find that I didn't agree with some commanders we had that went on to become generals and everything. Because in my opinion, which they didn't ask mine, but in my opinion, their leadership left a lot lacking. And I'm talking about the commanding officers. With the exception of one officer. Major Patrick. We were broke down. We had our service platoon, and then we had a unit, the 407th, that was our support. They were right there beside us, and there was a certain part of the maintenance on the aircraft that they performed, and a certain amount that we performed, depending on the level of maintenance. You understand kind of what I'm saying? And Major Patrick, from here you won. My first day down on the flight line, after I got to the aircraft come in. I got the rotors hadn't even stopped turning. The pilots was gone. I said, whoa, what is wrong with this picture? You know. So I got to go to Captain Ellis, his team leader. That's him, laying over in the right corner, 3-6. I said, Captain, I just observed an aircraft come in. And I said, the pilot was gone before the rotors stopped turning. I said, that ain't right. I'm not going to have that. I said, the very least they can do is stay there and post-flight that aircraft. And I said, I highly recommend that they have the crew chief and gunner work off what's wrong with that aircraft. And he said, Sarge, I agree with you. I said, okay. Well, I didn't find out until we had a reunion in '93 in California. and he told me, he said, Sarge, when you took that platoon, I was scared to death of you. And I said, Lord, I wish I'd knew that then. Because he was a well-seasoned captain on his second tour in Vietnam, just like I did on my second tour. And I never dreamed of him being scared of me, because if I had, I sure took advantage. But I played it diplomatically, you know. I would offer suggestions and let him make the decisions, which usually the decisions went the way I wanted them, every once in a while. But old John Wayne there, we get to live, I can tell you some stories about him and the rest of that bunch over there. All of them I wasn't involved in. But they'd come to me and they'd say, Sarge, you might hear about this. And they'd tell me, and I'd say, you done what? Well, Sarge, it seemed like that. Because when I was dealing with them, my platoon was split. At one time I had half of them at Long Bend, half of them at Thompson Newt. And then they moved from Thompson Newt to Knob Bay, which was a little old naval station. And I wanted to go because that's where we flew our missions out of. And I wanted to go down there and stay with my platoon, but the first sergeant wouldn't let me. No, I'll get you an assistant platoon sergeant. Okay. Well, he got me one. Wasn't but 2 or 3 weeks, I had to go down and relieve him. Now, not to say I didn't go down there. I'd fly down there, about every day. I'd fly down there. But I needed to be down there with them. Because that was the aircraft that were on line. Those was the ones that was subject for action. Even though we had crews on standby at Long Bend, because we got into some stuff up there. And I tried to keep 4 guns at Knob Bay flyable. And I tried to keep 2 guns. I had 8 gunships. And I tried to keep 2 flyable at Long Bend. And 2 down for maintenance. With good scheduling, which I could do now, I could schedule. That was my strong suit, I guess, was organizing and planning. And the only thing that crippled us was we flew Nighthawk missions. I'm totally off on the wrong thing, ain't it?
Don't matter. I just want to hear you talk.
We flew Nighthawk missions. And the light ship was what I fly. But we only had 1 light ship. And when it come down for maintenance, got grounded for whatever reason, it kind of put us in a trick. And we never did get we tried to get the second light ship, but never could get to it. And John, what he was talking about, I believe it was when he cut down the tree that was the end of the runway. He brought that up a while ago about when I told him, don't you tell everything, we'll all be in jail. But he was telling him about that, what he did. You wouldn't believe the man. things. Everybody else was too scared to do it. But he come up with a chainsaw and a Navy boat. But this tree was right at the end. When we'd come in at night, and the first thing had come. And we went to the village chief, and everybody tried to get him to cut it. But Genghis Khan or somebody had planted that dang tree. You know, everything had a religious side to it. So John got a Navy boat, Navy uniform, and a chainsaw. And he eliminated that tree. Well, next thing we knew, me, I think Captain Ellis, Colonel Thomas, and John was Admiral something. Thought I never would get his name. But anyhow, he was down there, and he wanted John Wayne court-martialed and stripped of all of his rank, and you okay, Admiral? That'll happen. Oh, they call it captain's mast, and when you go up for punishment in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And we relieved him of his rank and said he was never to set foot on Navy base again. Yeah, okay. So we got John on the aircraft and we headed back to Longville. On the plane going back, we gave him his rank back. There ain't no Navy man gonna take an Army man's rank. And we kept John at Longville 48 hours and we sent him back to, because John was the best armament man there was. Turn that off just a second.
That's great.
And God only knows what was in those connexes. I wouldn't go look. I go down there, I knew he had it. But we could tell him we needed anything. He had trading material in those connexes.
Yeah.
That's what he had. Did you ever see the movie
I thought Joe was up here.
Huh?
Is Joe not over here?
Huh?
Well, we haven't seen him. He ain't been back to the house. We thought Joe was over here.
No, I kind of teed him off.
Oh, because Joe didn't believe?
Yeah.
Well, he had come to the house.
I told
Well,
him.
when y'all get through, ready to take a break,